Hi, I'm Justine, and I'm here to tell you being mentally ill isn't the end of the world. I know what it's like to live with a mental illness. It's hard. You're constantly trying to hide your struggles from others, and you feel like you're weaker than others because of your illness. But that's not true. So many badasses struggle with mental illnesses, but they don't talk about them because they're afraid of being judged or thought of as weak minded. Well, guess what? They're not. We can change that by talking openly about our struggles and sharing our stories with each other in a positive light. This is why I created Mentally a Badass, so we can come together as badasses who are also mentally ill or who's had it rough in life and share our stories with one another in a safe place that celebrates our strengths rather than shames our weaknesses. I hope this podcast helps you feel less alone in this crazy life of ours, and I hope it makes your life just a little bit better. In today's episode, we have an extraordinary guest joining us. He's known as the popular young publicist and talent rep in New York City and has been featured in articles such as Insider's Top 22 PR Pros for Influencers. But today, Matthew Cancel, the owner of Cancel Communications, is here to open up about his own personal journey. We'll explore his courageous decision to come out as gay, his battles with eating disorders, and his experience with sex addiction while navigating a demanding and high-stress industry. Hey everybody, welcome back to Mentally a Badass. My name is Justine, and today I'm bringing on my good friend Matthew Cancel that I have known since we were in grade school up to like 5th grade. So I'm very happy to have him onto my podcast today. He is a badass entrepreneur in the PR world, and then also we are going to talk a lot about like LGBTQ in honor of Pride Month. And so thank you so much, Matthew, for coming onto my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so exciting. I'm glad we're finally getting to do this.
Yes, it only took like 2 months.
I
Maybe
know.
more. Yeah, something like that. We're just like very busy, but I'm so glad to finally have you on here and thank you for taking the time. So let's go ahead and dive into talking about your childhood and your past. We always dive deep into that here on Mentally a Badass. So, you're openly gay. And so let's talk about when you knew that you were gay.
When I knew I was gay. Well, it's so funny because we've known each other for so long, so you're gonna know who all of these people are. Literally, I think a part of me like always kind of knew when we were growing up, but like you know how it was like in Catholic school, like it wasn't even like we were getting yelled at for like small little personal things. Like we were just getting yelled at all the fucking time. Like they were like constantly on us. They were always screaming at us. Like we went through a really mentally abusive Catholic school that was like super unhealthy. So it never felt like a safe space. It never felt like a space for me to be like open or like talk about things that were going on personally with me. And I think that's like what made us all very close when we got a little bit older, because we all realized like, hey, this was really fucked up, and that was like really wrong, and that was really mentally abusive. But I would say like it clicked for me in 7th grade when I had my first crush on like a guy, and it was Dylan King. And I remember one day just like looking at Dylan King and being like, holy shit, like I feel very different about him today. And I don't know why that is. Because 7th grade is like when you're going through puberty. So like you actually start developing like, wait, what is this? What is that? What is sexual attraction? And it was around then where I was like, oh shit, I really have a like big crush on Dylan King. And I kind of let that marinate for like 2 years. And then by the time I got to 8th grade, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm definitely gay. But again, we were in Catholic school. And I don't know if you remember, but Marvin was a grade above us. I remember like teachers being really mad that he was gay. I remember like parents constantly
Wait, they were
talking
talking about
about it.
different Marvin then because Marvin I know is not gay.
No. So I'm talking
Different
about.
Marvin. Okay, he's not active in my life anymore. Never mind.
Okay, yeah, no. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, this is not someone I think you would know. There was a kid that
Yeah,
was
I
a
do. I
grade
know who
above.
you're talking about though.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I remember all like the chatter and like, parents being mad and teachers being mad and whatever. And I remember being like, I can't come out while I'm in grade school. I'm A, 13 years old, and then B, like, I have an example of like what's going to happen to me. And that doesn't look, again, like a safe space. So I guess I did, to answer your first question, I knew in like 7th grade. That's when I kind of confirmed it. And I let it kind of marinate for 7th and 8th grade.
Did you have any girlfriends didn't you like date someone in grade school? Didn't you like kiss a girl?
No, it was your friend that we had like a crush on each other, and we went to the movies once and then we never spoke again. Do you remember this? It was your
I know
friend.
exactly who you're I'm not gonna mention names because
Yeah,
this person still follows me on Instagram, but I know
yeah,
exactly who you're talking about. Oh my God. Wow, I feel like this podcast is like very freaking mind blowing for me right now.
yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
goodness. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I
She
would
had like
be
a crush on me or something, and I was like, I guess I have a crush on you because I didn't like at the time. I was like, all right, if a girl has a crush on me, I guess we have to go on a date, and then that's what we did. We literally like went to the movies. I mean, this was before high school, so I remember she was a year younger than us, so I had to
Is
be in
she?
like seventh grade.
Oh yeah, she
Yeah,
is. Yeah.
I was in like seventh grade and she was in like sixth grade or eighth grade, seventh grade, one of those. And I just remember we went to the movies. That's all I remember. We didn't kiss, we didn't hold hands, nothing. We went on one date and then we never spoke again.
Did you know she was my roommate for like a hot minute?
Wait, really?
Let's say you didn't go to like public high school and you went to Catholic high school. Do you think that you would have stayed in the class until senior year?
No. When I got to like Rachel Park High School, like when I got to our high school, I started dating a kid that was a senior at Paramus Catholic.
I remember.
And yeah, and I remember like he was very like open and proud
Yeah.
and you know and I remember he was a big example for me because I was like, I would have probably went to that school. If I would have gonna go to Catholic school, I was gonna go to Paramus Catholic.
I
Um,
wanted to go there.
I wanted to go there so bad.
I
At the
couldn't. My
time,
sister went there
yeah.
and like my cousins, but like then it was like, oh no, you can't go, Justine, because recession.
No, that's exactly what happened with me. My parents were like, we're not spending money on this. And also like Metro Park High School is right here. And I was like, no, I want to go to because I wasn't religious as a child.
Yeah.
I think I bought into like the elitism as a
Yes,
child.
I think
So
that's what it was.
yeah, I bought into like the way that our teachers used to scare us about public school. And they were like, you can't go to public school. They're
Yes.
horrible there. Like you have to keep going with Catholic school, like yada, yada, yada. And they would make us like very scared of public school. So I was like, well, either I'm going to go to Paramus Catholic or I'm going to like get bullied or something. Like I was very scared of public school.
Yeah.
But
Me
no,
too.
I think if I would have went to Paramus Catholic, like I would have been even closer to the boyfriend that I was dating because
Yeah.
we met when we were in separate schools.
Yeah.
So if we would have went to the same school, it would have been so much easier. And I probably would have been like, oh, he's a senior, he's gay, he's out. I'm a freshman, I'm gonna come out. And it wasn't even like a coming out. Like I remember when it happened, I remember like the day it all kind of went down. I started seeing that guy from Paramus Catholic, and we hung out a couple of times. At the time, I guess I had told a couple of people I was 14. Maybe I told you, maybe I told a couple of people like behind the scenes. And then one day I literally just went on Facebook and I put in a relationship with, and I just put his name.
Oh, really?
And that was my announcement. And then like I changed my profile. So drama, the way that like social media worked back then. He used to be on the football team. He wasn't even actively on the football team when we were dating, but
Uh-huh.
I took his football jersey and I posted it as my profile picture on Facebook. So I put like in a relationship with, posted his football jersey. Because when all the girls were doing that, like they would wear the boys' football jerseys.
Yeah,
So I
I
did the
did
same thing.
that.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's just kind of how I told people. And I remember like the next week, I think I did it over the weekend. Then when I came to like school, a couple of people I talked about, I'd be like, do you have a boyfriend? And I was like, yep. And that was it. That was like the end of the
Oh,
conversation. And they were like,
I
okay,
love
we have
that.
our answer.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so the profile picture on Facebook was you. Was it you in the jersey?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah. I for a second I thought you were saying he just posted this picture of his jersey. I'm like,
No, 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 I was wearing his jersey. I was
I
wearing his jersey because I was
remember
like,
that. I thought that was
yeah,
so cute. Oh my
yeah, yeah,
gosh. And then I remember, because I do remember you dating him, and yeah, he was pretty good looking too. I was like, dang, Matthew, you getting
yeah,
with a senior and all of that. You know, sometimes I mess around with Regan because we're like 3.5 years apart. So like when I
yeah,
was a freshman, he was a senior.
yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, I know you guys stayed for like what, like a 3 months or something like that, or
Something like that. We dated up until my knee surgery. So do you remember when I had knee surgery? So
I
when I had knee
forgot
surgery,
about
I
knee
guess,
surgery.
and I was bedridden for a month and a half.
Yes.
After that, he kind of was like, all right, I'm done with this. Like, I got to go to college. This kid's 14. I was like 14 turning 15. He was about to turn 18. So he was like, I'm about to turn 18. This is about to get weird and illegal. And
Oh,
I
that's
am
true.
going to
Yeah, I didn't think of
college.
that.
Yeah. He's like, I'm going to go to college and you can't walk. I'm going to just kind of exit this way, which like at the time I was upset. But then looking back, I'm like,
No,
yeah,
yeah, you were
years
very
old.
upset. I remember us and like other people that were really close to you. We were like around your bedside
Yes. Yeah.
when you
And I
were
was like
crying.
crying. I was crying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember it like very well, like the image
Yes.
in my head. Like I remember exactly where the bed was. Like it was,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
was like that room, like next to your living room,
Living room.
right
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
window. And I remember we were like
Mhm.
all visiting you. I don't know, we bring flowers and stuff like that. Like it was like
Um,
super like dram it's dramatic like a bad way to say, but I remember because it was
no.
dramatic at
Yeah.
the time. You were very hurt. But I just think
Yeah.
about it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, you were literally bedridden and a broken heart.
Bedridden.
You had like knee surgery and a broken heart. And I was like, oh my God, like this is horrible.
Yeah. And that was kind of also, it's so fucked up, like how much was going on during that time too. That was also like the first time my parents were like coming to terms with the fact that I was gay. Cause I think I had told them a little bit before that, or I had like mentioned it and it like didn't go great. It didn't go bad. It was kind of just there. And
Uh-huh.
then during that time was when they actually saw me like with a boyfriend. And I
Hmm.
think that like made it real in their head. So that was a very there was a lot of friction during that time because they would be like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever, it's cool. But then they would also be like, holy fuck, this is real. Matthew has a boyfriend. And there's like a man in the house that's dating Matthew. What the fuck? And so them dealing with that, me dealing with their behavior towards that was like very, very tricky. And I couldn't go anywhere. Like every time I got pissed off or I was upset, I couldn't like pick up, just to go for a walk or like go to my friend's house. I was like, I'm stuck in this fucking bed dealing with all of this, like cannot walk.
You know, when I remember that whole situation, I remember, yeah, you being like in bed, we're all around you, like at your bedside. But with my memory and how long ago it was, I forgot about the knee surgery part.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? That kind of actually makes sense why you were bedridden,
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
from my memory. Oh my goodness. So as you were mentioning how your experience with your parents and stuff. So when you told them that you were gay, like what was like their first reaction? Like, do you remember? Or was like,
So from the Facebook post, my aunt had followed me on Facebook.
mm-hmm,
My aunt had followed me on Facebook, and my mom didn't have a Facebook. So my aunt was kind of like the first adult to know. And I remember she came into my room and she was very like loving and supporting. She came into my room and she was like, Matthew, we need to talk about something. And I was like, what? She was like, you just posted something on Facebook, but you have not told any of your family. And I'm like, well, why do I have to tell anybody? That was my whole attitude. My whole attitude was like, why does it have to be something that I have to tell anybody? Like
mm-hmm,
everybody should kind of just know. And she
yeah,
was like, I understand that, but you haven't told your parents, and now this is public information.
mm-hmm,
And different family members are going to see this on Facebook, your friends are going to see this on Facebook, etc. Your parents, at least deserve the conversation. And I kind of was like, okay, whatever, you're right. And her and I had like a little heart to heart, and that wrapped. And then my mom thought it was weird that my aunt was in my room, like talking to me about something, because me and my aunt had never had like private conversations. My aunt was like, what are you guys talking about? Like, what secret are you keeping from me? It like happened
uh-huh,
immediately. And then I was like,
yeah.
it's not a big secret, but it's this, that, and the third. And I remember I cried a little bit and I got a little upset. And then like my mom in the moment, it was fine. But the aftermath of like the years after that, it was not fine.
Really?
Um, yeah, I would say like my mom had the heart, like her whole thing was, okay, you're gay, that's fine, but don't express yourself. Like when I would paint my nails, it was a thing. If I would dye my hair, it was a thing. If I would wear certain types of clothes, it was a thing. Like my mother was very uh upset with like expressing myself in like a queer way. Like she was like, yeah,
Yeah.
be a boy, but like act like a boy and play sports. Like be gay, but act like a
I
boy.
vaguely remember that. You mentioning that to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
Huh.
that caused a lot of friction between me and my mom. And then me and my dad, like I remember shortly after I told my mom, my mom was like, well, you need to tell your dad too. And I was like, fine. And I sat down and had a conversation with him and it went fine. But it was the same thing too. It was just like they they didn't wrap their heads around the fact that like, oh, Matt's gay. He's not going to be the boy that we envisioned for himself. Like I think at the moment they were like, okay, well, he's still gonna play sports. He's still gonna get married one day. He's still gonna have the white picket fence. He'll still be an accountant. Like he'll still
Be
go
an
through this life.
accountant?
They like very much had like a very boring, structured life of what they thought I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
do.
I
Like,
get
you know
that.
what I mean? Like
I didn't know they thought that you're gonna be an accountant.
they
I'm
wanted
like,
me to be something like that. They wanted me to be like an accountant or a lawyer or something. Like they just
oh,
my biggest problem with my parents, and it's even to this day, like we kind of fight about it, but like they never really took interest in like getting to know me. Like
yeah.
I think they always were we kept it very much like surface level for a very long time, and anytime we dove like a little bit deeper, it was an issue.
Hmm.
And growing up, it was a thing. Now that I'm like an adult, I've like reconciled with it, and I'm like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't say like I would say teenage years were definitely very tough. It was very tough like in school, but it was also very tough like at home.
Did anyone in school bully you?
Not in high school. Not in high school,
Yeah.
but in grammar school, yes. Like I
Yeah.
think we all got bullied to a certain extent in grammar school. I think the guys were really, really mean. I think the guys were really nasty to like they were nasty to all of us. Like they would call you names, they would call me names, they would
Uh-huh.
call,
My
the other
audience is
girl.
very aware of
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
that.
and they were really the guys were really, really hard on us and they were really mean to us. They were
Yeah.
shitheads and they got away with a lot. They got away with a
They did.
lot. And I won't name names, but you already know
Yeah.
the girl that I'm talking about. Like she was the one that kind of had the alliance with the guys. It was,
I think I do. We'll talk later
it was a
about that.
popular girl that ended up being, the one who ended up going to Bergen Tech, et cetera, et
Oh
cetera.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
she was very like
She
besties
was
with the
she was
guys.
like the leader. Oh, right. She would always be with the
Right.
guy.
She
Do
would
you
always be with the
remember how they
guys.
separated us during
Oh
like
yeah.
recess?
Mm-hmm.
That was horrible. That was
That was fucked
stupid.
up. Yeah. So because her and I were best friends for many, many years.
Are you guys
But
still
me,
friends?
no, I haven't spoken to her since I was like 21.
No.
Crazy. Yeah. I haven't spoken to her in about 7 years.
I had no idea. Well,
Mhm.
again, I mean, I had a feeling that you guys weren't friends anymore because I don't see her in any of your like stories and things like that. Wait, so
Yeah.
is it just like me and Rona that you still talk to?
And Will, but he's from high school.
Oh yeah, I'm talking more about like grammar school.
Grammar school, yeah, because the other one too, we haven't spoken in almost
The
next
other
month
one.
a year.
Oh, that one. Okay.
Which that one's crazy. But I'd say like grammar school was like you remember it, like it was very name calling. Like the guys were like very like I was called a faggot. I remember every single day. I
Yes, I
like
remember that.
every like fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, all the time. Like they called, but they were relentless towards everyone. Like those guys, and it was only like six of the guys, and then they would bully the rest of the guys, and then they would bully all the girls, and they had like nasty names for every single
Sounds
person.
like society right now.
No, literally, that's very true. A bunch of cis men going after everybody else. And then when I got to high school, it wasn't bullying. It wasn't like verbal bullying, like it wasn't
Mhm.
school. It was more like exclusion. It was more just like I wasn't invited to the parties. I wasn't invited to
Really?
go
I thought you were
hang out
like the Regina George of like
of high school, Justine.
okay,
What do you
of
mean?
our group, of our group.
Of our group, but our group is very small. Our group was me, you know.
No, okay,
The,
no, there's more in our group. You know that.
no, 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 me. No, it was me, you. Like, I mean, we can. It was,
Okay,
it
I
was.
mean,
It was like five of us. It
I,
was like five or six of us. It wasn't a lot of us.
yeah, I feel like I was a part of like every like a lot of groups in high school.
Yeah, it moved around a lot in high school. I will say, like,
Yeah,
when I
we were
wasn't.
closer freshman year. I feel like
Yeah,
when you like
yeah.
saved my life a couple of times.
What do you mean? In what way? Like
There's
emotionally?
there's so many times you saved my life. Well, no, saved
That's
my
like
life as
emotion.
in like we'll go to concerts and I would almost die in a mosh pit. Do you remember
Oh yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. That I remember. I
And
remember
then
that.
like another night where you got me out of a weird situation, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was another crazy time.
And then you knocked me out, but I deserved it.
Oh yeah.
So society looks at the LGBT community as mentally ill. What are your thoughts on
Mhm.
that statement?
Mentally ill. Well, I don't think it's society. I think that we're now living in a world where, we're able to put every single person that has certain beliefs into like almost one bucket. I
Mhm.
think 10 to 15 years ago, people were very veiled with their hatred and people were very veiled with their like bigotry. And, you know, there could be someone that maybe had a little bit more of like a closed-minded perspective on things, but they were still a good person. Nowadays, it's like, okay, either you're awake and alert and you're smart and
Mhm.
you're cognizant of the fact that like this is science and like
Mhm.
being a part of the LGBTQ plus community is like scientific,
Mhm.
transgenderism is science, being queer is science, scientific, etc. or, you're just like a neo-Nazi conservative bigot who like, reads Fox News and is like anti-fact and is just
Yeah.
has this crazy conspiracy theory going on that like drag queens are, touching children and gay people are trying to, coerce people, like crazy, crazy things. I think everyone by now has kind of everyone that's smart and young and, educated
Yeah.
knows exactly what's going on. But I think there is still a very large percentage of people that are just like completely
Hmm.
ignorant and like stupid, but
Hmm.
it's easier to call out that behavior now. I wish I had the language and education now did that I didn't then, because I remember at like 14 being in certain situations, 14, 15, 16, and certain people would say certain things to me and I'm like, I wish I could look at them and be like, you bigoted fucking asshole. You know what I mean? Like I wish I could look at them and be like, you narcissistic, misogynistic pig, like you're a fucking moron.
Yeah.
You're living
Yeah.
in, 1830 and you're a barbarian. And I feel bad for you that you're a Neanderthal. And I wish I
Hmm.
had that understanding because at the time when I was younger, I thought I was doing something wrong. I thought I was doing something bad. Like I thought that there was something wrong with me and that what I was doing was, you know, um, a taboo. I thought like, oh, it's on me. And now that I'm older, I'm like, no, there was nothing wrong with me. There was
Hmm.
everybody around me were the people that were incorrect.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I would think my statement probably make more sense if I said like part of society, because there are like people who still say like, oh, you're gay, it's like mentally ill. Like I
Yeah.
know the boomer generation, like they are saying that, and then like since I'm really like focused a lot in the mental health world, I'm
Mhm.
still seeing in these crazy comments like that. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I'll get like hate comments on my stuff with my reels and everything like that. Like I put like one of my reels got like I think like 30 something thousand views, and I've had some like people like say ignorant things like that to me. So
Mm.
it's as a society, we are definitely getting better since like 10 years ago, but there's
Yeah.
still a big portion that are just still saying that. So I just wanted to see like your feedback on someone who is a part of like the LGBTQ community. If someone were to say to you, oh, like you're mentally ill, would you be like, no, like what the, cause it's ignorance. It's not like you're not mentally
Yeah.
ill. I think that's like messed up to put you into that kind of category, because that is like not at all what it is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
mostly the people who are very religious who are thinking like, oh, because you don't like women, and God says men and women and yada yada yada, and if you're liking a men, then there's something wrong with you in your brain. Like that's pretty much what they're saying.
Yeah.
So I think like I was just wanting to hear from like your particular perspective, but I think your perspective is like very like your response was like very mature, and you're
Mhm.
right, everything is a science. And yeah, so I really do like that feedback. I love asking these questions because I'll think I'll get a certain answer, but I get like completely different answer, and it's just like it's so valuable. So yeah,
Yeah.
that was great. Um, so let's talk about your confidence and your sexuality. I feel like we kind of already touched on this when you're talking about like, in Catholic school you didn't feel comfortable coming out because, all these people were like, horrible. And then like in high school, people weren't really bullying you or anything like that. So I feel like, right now you are very confident in your sexuality and you're on social media and you're being the badass person that you are today. Like, when was your like breakthrough of like
Hmm.
going from like you're gay and you're
Yeah.
open about it, but now you're like very out proud so on social media, this and that. Like when was like that breakthrough?
Mm,
I
well, like a couple of things. And I think that even at a very young age, I look back at my younger self and I'm always like very proud of myself
mm-hmm,
because I would say I was like very defiant and outward and just like rebellious
mm-hmm,
from the beginning. Like I remember when I was 14 and I just want people to know I'm gay. I'm posting it on Facebook. I'm posting the jersey. And then it was like, okay, now I want to wear nail polish. I'm gonna do it. I want to wear this skirt or whatever it is or a crop top. I'm gonna do it. Like, and I remember peers saying things. I remember my parents saying things, and I remember just being super rebellious and defiant and being like, I don't know why I feel so strongly about expressing myself this way, but I know that I have to do it. And I know that like me liking certain types of music or liking certain, makeup or whatever it is, like this isn't wrong. I just don't have the language and the knowledge yet to communicate to you why this is not wrong. Right.
mm-hmm,
And I remember being that, and I remember people really boggling me down and almost the fact that I was like getting to certain people almost like drove me a little bit further because I was like, well, you wouldn't be so upset if I wasn't doing something that made you think differently. Like you wouldn't be so upset if I wasn't doing something that was expressing myself. If I was another cog in the machine, you would be completely fine with like who I am, what I'm doing, what I'm wearing. But the
Mhm.
fact that I'm not, it's almost holding up a mirror to you because like I am being so free and I am being so expressive and I am being such a big version of myself. And it almost makes, you know, bullies and it makes people who hate themselves even more because they're like, wait, why can't I do that? Like, why can't I express myself that way? Why is he so confident? That's what makes
Mhm.
people angry a lot of the time.
Mhm.
I would say that like my teenage years, I was like angry, but I was defiant and I was like rebellious. But
Mhm.
then like in my late teens and in my early 20s, I would say that like my confidence took like a really big dip and I didn't really know how
Really?
to love myself. And I would say like even though I was very outwardly gay and very
Mhm.
like uh I never had a problem with showing people that I was gay or being, overly queer or whatever it was.
Mhm.
But on the inside, it was like, it wasn't that I hated myself because I was gay. It was the years of hating myself for all those other things. And it was like, okay, well, now I'm not skinny enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not cool enough. Like, I don't have the right group of friends. I'm not making enough money, this, that, and the third. And all of those things kind of started evolving into very, very toxic and like disruptive behaviors in like my late teens and early 20s. And that's when things kind of started spiraling into like problems with sex addiction and problems with drinking too much and problems with like putting myself in situations that were like very dangerous and scary for me. Um, and those things and that accumulation of all of that is like things I had to very much like overcome in my mid 20s. And that's when I started having to do like all of this self-healing and self-work to be like, all right, this has happened in my childhood, my teens, and my 20s. Like this is where I am now, my mid 20s. I want to be a mentally stable person in
Mhm.
order to move my life forward. How do
Mhm.
I?
Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that like after we, dip into your career and such. So you would say like I mean, I feel like my like downtime of my life was like high school and I was like my confidence was like early 20s. So
Mhm.
I feel like ours was like complete polar opposites, which I honestly like I do remember because we were still like close in our early 20s and then we kind of drifted off when I
Yeah.
moved to Florida. And which so between like the ages of like 22 and how old are we now? You're 20 and I'm 27. And we started being yeah, because we
Mhm.
weren't like friends for like 2 years for stupid reasons.
Yeah.
Um to laugh at that now. Anyway.
Mhm.
So and I had no idea what was going on in your life like for
Yeah.
those like 2 years. Like
Mhm.
so was it like during that time?
Kind of, but it also was like during times where people would see me, all the time. The thing about my unhealthy habits and like, I'll use the word addiction for like when it comes to sex. Like I would say like I struggled with sex addiction, but then I would also say I struggled with like disordered eating. Those two things,
Yeah. I remember the
it's
eating
not
part.
Yeah, it's not when you're struggling with alcoholism or heroin addiction or, cocaine addiction, it's visible. Like you can see when someone's drunk, you can see when someone's high on something, you can see it. But like eating and sex, eating, you have to do it to stay alive. And then sex, you do it behind closed doors. So nobody's going to see that anyway. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
there were these two things that were happening simultaneously where they're part of your everyday life anyway. So nobody really knows when those two things get out of hand. It's more of
Mm-hmm.
like a personal thing,
Mm-hmm.
So that those two things are like harder to see. So I think a lot of people in my life didn't really know what was going on. I would say the eating thing got to a point that was really bad when I was like 23, 24. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when people like interjected a little bit because I had become
Yeah.
thin that like people were like, Matthew, you look like you're sick. Like you look like you
Uh-huh.
have like a disease or there's something wrong with you. Like you've
Uh-huh.
gotten so thin that like this is not good.
I do remember like between like in college and stuff, you would be very big on like looking skinny and things like that. And we'll have like conversations about that. But I think at the time I wasn't really as educated with
Yeah.
like eating disorders, or I just didn't like want to assume it because I never want to assume just because someone is counting calories or thinking about being skinny doesn't necessarily mean they have an eating disorder.
Right.
But I remember you coming out about like the sex addiction thing, I think on Instagram and such. And I had like no idea. I mean, you would be very open with your sex life. I remember when we were like really close, and I
Yeah.
didn't know it like turned into a point where like it became a problem in your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So are you doing better with that right now?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So much better. So much better. And like there the the problem with something like that is like within the gay community, like so many, and I'm talking about the gay community in like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Miami, like the gay community in major cities. And I'm talking about the cis um male gay community. Within these like cities, the life and the culture and um like really just the lifestyle, things like that get normalized so quickly, and things
Mm-hmm.
like that get normalized at such a young age that there are so many people that are probably struggling with sex addiction that don't even know that they have a sex like problem. They don't even realize that like they have spiraled out of control with their sex life, and like the way that they're interacting with sex is like not in a healthy way in any way, shape, or form. And I think that comes from a lot of different things, but I think it mostly comes from the fact that like so many gay people grow up hating themselves. They grow up getting bullied. They grow up, just not having that confidence. So when they get to a
Mm-hmm.
major city and they become an adult and they get to do whatever they want,
Mm-hmm.
sex validates them. Sex makes them feel better. And sex is like, okay, someone finally finds me attractive. How do I fill this void over and over and over again? And that's when it kind of spirals out of control. I would say for me, it was like, I would say it was like during the pandemic when I was in a relationship and I kind of realized I was like, I need to go to therapy, but I need to go to like specialized therapy for
Mm-hmm.
sex addiction, for LGBTQ plus issues. And that's what my therapist specialized in. And I did it for almost like 2 years consistently. And it like really, really changed my life. Like it really, really got me to the other side where I was like, oh, this is how sex is currently in my life. Like it is really taking up way too much of my time. It is something that I do not have a healthy relationship with. And it's something that I want to get better at. And now on the other side of it, I'm like, okay, I think of everything so much differently. Um, yeah, I forgot what the initial question was. Is it better? Yes, it's much better in my life now.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was more of asking that question as more like a friend than a podcast interviewer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And make sure you're doing good with that because that sounds like that breaks my heart to know that like you went through that. But I'm glad that you're doing better, and it's good that you knew to not just go to therapy, to go to a specialized one because like I have a lot of education on, like mental health and disorders. I did go to school for psychology and stuff like that, but I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't know that how to help somebody with like
Mm.
a sex addiction. So
Yeah,
it's definitely going to go to a specialized one. I'm still today trying to find like a good one. It's so hard.
it's so
Like
hard.
it's so hard. Like ugh, it's ridiculous. Um anyway, so now let's transition into your current life and your
Mm-hmm.
career. So let's talk about after college you worked at multiple PR firms. What made you decide that you wanted to leave and start your own company?
Whew. Oh my God.
I know it's a loaded question.
Loaded question, but I'll try to curate it specifically like for the vibe of this podcast because I feel like mental health played a very, very, very large part in that
Did for
decision.
me too. Mhm.
Yeah. Um, there were a couple of different reasons. I would say the top bullets were A, I was very tired of working in a very ineffective environment. Like
Mhm.
way, and I think it's changing very rapidly now. And I think the future of PR is not going to look the way that it has. But the way that PR was kind of set up during that time when I was, working at agencies was I'm an account executive, and under me, I have an assistant account executive, and under her, there's a coordinator, and under her, there's an intern, and then above me, there's a senior account executive, and then there's a vice president, then there's a senior vice president, then there's a CEO. We're a team of 8 working on one account. There's people I have to manage down to, people I have to manage up to, and it's like one person can do this job properly if they can just like do it without all the fucking back and forth, without
Mhm.
having to manage
Yeah.
down, manage up, and blah, blah, blah. And the bloat was constantly preventing me from doing good work. And when I was doing the best work is when I was by myself. And I would constantly be slapped on the wrist from higher ups being like, okay, you're doing a great job, but like you need to involve more of your team. You need to train the intern. You need to tell your senior vice president or whatever the fuck, like what you're doing. And I'm just like, why? I'm like, these extra steps are delaying us from just getting to the final product. And
Mhm.
in the world of PR, the thing that we constantly need more of is time. And the things that we need to activate on are timely. We don't have a lot of time to waste.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the bloat was really bothering me and it was really boggling me down, and that was annoying me. And through that realization, I started kind of auditing that like my ideas were the best ideas and that my work was the best work, whether someone was above me, below me, whatever it was. I was like, I hate to say it, but like I know I'm still young, but I know what the fuck I'm talking about and I'm driving results here. I think the other thing too is, well, that scenario was very much like, I would say that was like a healthy PR agency. The most annoying thing was like the bloat. An
Yeah.
unhealthy PR agency was like the mental, verbal abuse that was constant and just really embedded within the culture of like what PR is. Specifically, I'm talking about fashion PR. I look back at my time doing fashion PR because I was really, really junior when I was like at those companies. And it was so sick and twisted and like not only mentally abusive, but like looking back, it was fucking illegal. Like people were doing like illegal ass shit back then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I realized I didn't want to sell my soul to this. I didn't
Right.
want to dedicate my life to it. I think when I stopped working in fashion PR, when I took a step back, I was like, holy shit, this isn't the whole world, you know? Like you buy into this mentality where it's like you wake up at 8, you go to bed at 2 a.m., your whole life is dedicated to this because fashion is your life and fashion week is fucking everything. And the Chanel, Bottega, whatever the fuck couture show is the most important thing in the world and nothing else matters. And the longer you start doing it, the more you start buying into that. And I remember being like, I'm being treated like shit. So many people around me are being treated like shit. This is a very elitist, disgusting, like, you know, homophobic, queerphobic, fatphobic environment where people that are making it to the top are not doing it because they've worked the hardest or whatever. It's just that they've been the most toxic and now they're just
Mm-hmm.
like this horrible, really disgusting, vile person at the top that treats everybody like shit, but they've earned people's respect in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember being like, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be the person that wakes up every day, hates myself, hates life, and has this like cool job. But then I
Mm-hmm.
also didn't want to be the person that like kept climbing the ranks in a way that was like ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
So it got to a point where a lot of the clients I was working with were kind of like, we love you. We don't necessarily love the agency you're working with. You know, if you ever go elsewhere, if you ever go out
Ah.
on, you know, let us know. And I won't say, because I keep talking about it and I'm like, I need to stop talking about this publicly. I won't say what the client was, but there was a very big client,
Mm-hmm.
which that was the end all be all. And that
Mm-hmm.
was the catalyst of starting my own agency. This client and the agency I was working for were basically like, we're not seeing eye to eye. We don't want to work together anymore. And at the time I was like, I'll take you on if that's what you want. And they were like, sure. So I took like my whole roster and all my clients, and that's how I kind of started my own thing.
Yeah, because I saw that because when you launched, I saw like the clients that you had, and I was like, oh wait, but didn't he like have that person as a client when he was working for another company? So that's interesting. How I guess that was kind of like really like your biggest like, okay, it's time for me to start my own company. Because if they're telling me that they like me, it's just really just the agency that they're having issues with. It's like, oh, okay, then I'll just start my own thing. You know what I
Exactly.
mean? And then wow, that's awesome. But that's also interesting. I mean, I'm not shocked that the fashion industry is toxic. I mean, everyone's been saying that for like years. What industries would you say is like the least toxic that you work with?
What industry is the least toxic?
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, I think having touched now fashion, entertainment,
Hmm.
music, social media, tech, having touched all of them, I would
You have a
say
social media client?
social, like, yeah, like people that do social media, like for
Oh,
work,
oh, like
like for things.
influencers?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were talking about like agencies or something like that. I was like, oh, you PR for a social media agency?
No, no, no,
Okay.
no, no.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, wait, what? Okay, sorry, go on.
No. Um, I would say like unfortunately, like I feel like a lot, like kind of every industry is toxic in their own right. I would
Of course.
say, but I would say it's like a different type of toxic, like where you go. I would say tech is a very interesting, wacky, tacky, kooky world. And when I say tech, I mean like Silicon Valley, like Google, YouTube, Facebook, Meta. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that world, I would say technically is like the least toxic. I the same amount of experience I have in fashion is that like I have that equal amount of experience in tech. And I always loved working in tech because it was like people had their heads screwed on straight. They loved doing what
Yeah,
they
I was
did.
just gonna say that.
They had, unlimited vacation and all these different things. And they were happy at work. They had massive budgets. We were able to do like really cool things. Whenever I was working with a tech client, I was like, oh, this is really cool. I love entering fashion, music, and entertainment via tech because you have this barrier of like, okay, I'm not in fashion, but my client right now that is a tech company is sponsoring the Met Gala. So now I get to work on the Met Gala
Uh-huh.
via this client instead of working on it in the fashion space. You know what I mean? So I like
Yeah.
barrier and that protector. However,
Yeah.
we just saw the one of the biggest, like, I don't know if this is like factually accurate, but like one of the biggest tech recessions that I think we've ever seen. Like the client I used to have, the tech client, just laid off
Yeah.
21,000 employees, which affected my work and affected my work with that
Yeah,
company.
I actually had like a tech client that just dropped me recently.
Yeah, and it's because all of their internal clients that I reported to, they just fired all of them. So I don't have anybody to report to anymore. So I would say tech, but also at the same time, it's like what just happened was really shitty. Like I don't think, you know, I think a company that lays off 21,000 people is a company that had way too many people working there in the first place and just
Hmm.
had ineffective branches that were not moving the needle. But also at the
Hmm.
same time, I don't put a lot of that blame on the employees. I put a lot of the blame on the corporations that just get too big. They don't know how to control the people that work there. They
Yeah.
give everybody these titles and these salaries and these unlimited PTOs. And it's like, these jobs are fake. You know what I mean? These jobs that are at these companies, it's like, what the fuck do you do all day? And a lot of these people do absolutely nothing. And then when times get tough,
Interesting.
the economy starts to crash, they're like, wait, you got to get the fuck out of here. You don't do anything. And they're like, yeah, but I haven't been doing anything for 5 years. And I've worked here the whole time. And they're like, yeah, but we don't have any money anymore. So you got to go. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. Okay. Can we talk about your day-to-day life for, working in PR? A lot of people may not know exactly really what you do.
yeah.
So if we can kind of just go like a day in the life.
Sure. I mean, when I say like every day is different, I
Yeah,
truly
I
mean
know.
every day is
Yeah,
so
I get
different.
that.
And also too, like my company now, just like with the way that the world is moving, the way that the media landscape is changing, I'm changing with it. So like I wouldn't even really call myself a public relations agency anymore. I would call my agency more of like a creative slash media agency.
Hmm.
And the way that I kind of have been promoting the company right now is if you have a need within the media landscape, bring it to me and I'm sure we'll be able to find a solution. So simplified, what I'm doing right now is public relations strategy and execution, influencer marketing, and public figure marketing. And within those two things, it's like strategy for working with influencers and working with public figures within like a corporation and like the different needs that you'll have there. Event solutions slash like event planning and event production, and like top level like media consulting and like PR consulting. So I would say like those are like the four big buckets right now. Day to day, again, it's always different depending on like who I'm working with, who I'm not working with. There are a lot of clients that I work with like project basis. So like we'll do like a 3 week project and I'm like, all right, guys, see you the next time. And then there are some clients that I work with on a year-long project. And
Do
that's
they
like
have like a monthly retainer on you?
they do, yeah. That's what we
Okay.
try
I
to
was
do.
wondering how that worked. If
Yeah,
you have like let's say you have like a 3-week project, then it's
yeah.
like, let's say they don't need you for like 3 to 4 months. Like, how
Mhm.
do they like still pay you for those months?
Well, no. So like if it's like a project retainer and it's like, let's say it's an event and the event is in August and they start retaining me in
Oh,
June, it's like, all right, for the next 2 months, we'll plan the event. And then,
uh-huh.
as we get closer to the date, we'll start talking about like execution. And then the
Uh-huh.
day of the event, like I'll bring in a team to make sure that the event is flowing properly, et cetera, et cetera. Something
Mm-hmm.
like that would be like, a 2 month project. And it's like, here's the rate for 2 months and I give it to them. But there
Okay.
are, certain clients that like need a monthly retainer and it's like, we're going to need
Yeah.
publications every
Yeah.
month. And
I was
then
just
they're on
curious how
retainer.
that worked. Like,
Yeah.
cause I feel like, well, I'm not gonna say we're like the same because we're not in reality, but I was like wondering like how you operated your business. Like, I
Mhm.
guess it's like it's very more like project basis. Well, mine is too in reality, but
Yeah.
also mine is like they need me to be managing their socials like throughout the month. Like I can't like they can't have me for like 2 months and then like not have me for 2 months and their socials are like nothing's going on there.
Right,
Like
right,
they
right, right,
obviously
right.
can't do that. So,
Yeah. No,
but
yeah.
yeah, I was just curious about that. Okay, yeah, it sounds like your job's pretty exciting though. Like it's like literally, I mean, my every day is well, yours is definitely more different, obviously. But let's talk about PR crisis. So, how did you handle your first one? Like ever?
So what's crazy is I don't retain clients that are like problematic that have a lot of crises. I think so my specific scope of work for a lot of my clients is the fun stuff. So it's like
Mhm.
if they're planning, you know, Met Gala sponsorship, if they have a red carpet event, if they want to work with creators on like a really cool dinner, that's what I'm planning. There's a completely separate division within major companies that handle crisis comms. And then there's also agencies that specialize in crisis comms. As of right now, I do not specialize in crisis comms. I have not had a client that has gone through any major scandal. Fingers crossed, thank God. Like I've never had a client get canceled on Twitter. I've never had a client like, you know, have a sex tape leaked. I've never, and even when I was working for really big, you know, billion-dollar corporations, and they would have a scandal, and often those companies would have scandals quite frequently. It's just not something I would touch. So my scope of work is I'm consumer comms. Like I'm over here doing all your fun stuff. There are like 13 other teams that are dealing with that. And then there are even teams that are like legal, legitimate teams that work in tandem with the crisis PR teams, being like, all right, legally, this is what we're gonna do. PR wise, this is what you're gonna say. This, that, and the third.
Oh.
Um, yeah. So I can't say I've really managed a lot of like crazy scandals. That's just not my.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
people have asked me to. People
Uh-huh.
have definitely asked me to, and sometimes people get tripped up on the name because they think cancel means like cancel. I'm canceled. Like
I
I'm going
know your
for that.
last name. Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's like it's kind of insane how like I mean obviously you're born with that last name, but it's like
Yeah.
your last name is Cancel. And then when they think of cancel communications, they're like cancel culture.
No, literally. No, I've had
It's
people
like
come to me and be like, "Hey, like I'm in a crisis. Like, can I hire you?" And I'm like, "Oh no, we're not that type of agency, actually." Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of like messed up my name. Like, I mean, I put JER social as like just Elizabeth Rhodes, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people were like, oh, Jersey social.
Oh, LOL. Yeah.
And I realized I'm like, okay, I probably should have put some dots in between
Yeah.
because I think in my
Yeah.
head I was just thinking like, oh, JER social, but now I'm like, people are like, oh, they literally say Jer. I'm like, Jer social sounds idiotic. Like,
I like JER social. Yeah.
yeah, Jersey social just sounds like stupid. And some people are like, oh, they thought I did it because of Jersey. I'm like, why would I attach my Jersey roots to that? But
Yeah.
yeah, so now every time I'm like, okay, I gotta like make sure I put these dots because everyone's thinking I'm Jer social. I'm like, this
Yeah.
no, it's not good. I don't like that. Um, okay. Yeah, the reason I asked it because I don't know if you know this show. It's called Working Moms, I think it's called. It's on Netflix.
No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, it's this girl. She owns her own PR agency, so she like left her agency and like started her own thing, kind of like what you did. And there's like some
Mm.
episodes where she like deal with like PR crises and things like that. So
Yeah.
I was like, I feel like I would be so like basically she would be with the person if they were like getting like interviewed or things like that. And if someone like were to ask them like a question that would be like controversial or like kind of like attacking and they didn't know how to answer, she would like have to like figure something out.
Yeah.
So I was like, when I was watching this, I thought of you. I was like, did he deal with this kind of stuff? Because I feel like I'll be freaking stressed out.
I mean, like in small ways. I think the TV movie of it all makes it very, very dramatic. Like
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was this one Amazon show that I tried to watch, and it was about publicists. And the way that it made it seem, I was like, there's just no way that this is like how it happens in real life. Like it's so dramatic. It's it's like it can be anything to like silly things. Like you do an interview and you know the editor asks a certain amount of questions and then the article comes out and we don't like the framing. And the client will be like, hey, I really hate the way that this paragraph reads. That's not what I meant by that. Like they twisted my words, like blah, blah, blah. Do you mind just like going back and telling them that like they can't say it that way? And then it's as simple as like going back to the magazine and being like, hey, we love the piece. Like this is really great. This needs to be taken out. That's out of context. That's not factually accurate. Like boom, boom, boom.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the times the editor will go back with you, especially if like it's salacious or interesting or it's clickbaity and they want to keep it in there. They're like, well, you know, that's what they said and that's how we quoted them, like whatever. And I'm like, no, 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 it's not factually accurate. Like you need to take it down. And I would say like that's dealing with it. But even something like that, like it takes a couple of hours, then it kind of goes away. Um, you know, yeah, I would say that like people not being framed in the way that they thought they were going to be, that would be like a scandal. That's something that they would be upset about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've never had a client that like to date, I've never had a really salacious client that like we needed to do all this cleanup for and we needed to rebrand them
Uh,
to make people
oh yeah.
differently of them. Like I've A, that sounds like a lot of work. B, I don't think there's a lot of public figures that have had like major scandals that I feel passionately like, no, they didn't do it. And I would want to, you know what I mean? Like there are a lot of people that I'm like, yeah, I would never work with that person anyway. So I've
Oh yeah.
actually recently got called. I won't say who the public figure is, but and I hate this person. I hate they're like a influencer, but they're like a celebrity influencer, and I've always hated this person.
Okay.
I always thought they were sleazy and slimy. I thought the scandal that they had, I was like, yep, this makes perfect sense for what this person does. And a friend of this person called and was like, would you do his PR for X amount of money to like clean up his image and like and whatever? And I was like, absolutely the fuck not. I was like, not even no. I was like, there's not enough money to make me ever want to work with that person. I was like, exactly what's happening to them is exactly what they deserve. They're not good people.
Yeah.
I don't think that person deserves a redemption arc.
Yeah. Oh wow. I feel like we need to have like a whole conversation that's like off the podcast because all this stuff it's like
Mm-hmm.
obviously you can't mention just for privacy and stuff like that. But I'm
Yeah.
like I'm very curious just as your friend. Um okay, so let's transition into is there obviously you're not going to be like naming names and whatever, but is there any particular client you could think of your head that like really negatively impacted like your mental health like ever had like a mental breakdown or this or that?
Um, I would say luckily, I mean, yes, I can't really share,
Yeah,
specific
I know you can't like
examples.
mention names. I know because like things like that, they could always be like, "Oh, I'm gonna sue you," and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I would say that like since
use a
starting
fake name or something.
yeah, no, but since starting my own agency, luckily I get to stop that in its tracks before it gets out of hand. Like
Yeah.
when I was at someone else's agency and I was being first forced to work with like a client that I couldn't stand or that was really detrimental to like me and my mental health or whatever it was like too bad, you have to suck it up. Like the agency wants to retain this person and it's really not up to me. I can ask to be removed from the account, but like that may make me look difficult or that might make me look like not a team player, whatever it is. But now that I have my own thing, like there have been certain situations that get out of hand very quickly. And in those moments, I'm like, hey, I don't think this is working. I think that you and I do not see eye to eye. I think that like you would be better suited for somebody else, and that's totally fine. Luckily, within our contract, either of us can terminate at any point in time. This is my termination. Thank you so much, and I will not be providing my services to you anymore. And there's been a couple of times where I've done that, where I've got myself into a situation where I'm like, this is going to be great, and then I get into it, and I'm like, this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then there are other situations that I may really believe in the project, and I might really believe in the client, and I know it's not. I know, like in the back of my mind, it's not going to work out. This client is going to continue to be very difficult. The larger team associated with this client is going to become very difficult, but I hold on to it for as long as I can. And in
Mhm.
those situations, A, they've always blown up. B, I look back and I'm like, I should have ended that a lot earlier than I did, but I didn't because I believed in it. And there are those clients are the ones that I look back and I'm like, damn, I really liked you before all of this. I really liked you before getting to know you. And I really thought you were one way, and getting into the weeds of this was a little bit disappointing. I posted something on my Instagram the other day. Haley Williams was in town.
Mhm.
Paramore was in town the
Mhm.
other day for their tour. And my one of my clients who's a photographer, like he does all types of photography, concert photography, fashion photography, party photography, etc. And one thing he wants to be doing more of is like concert photography. So I kind of always hit up a bunch of like cool bands when they're in town to be like, hey, do you want to shoot? Do you want to do like some project together and see what we can do? And we got very close to making something work with like Haley and Paramore. Timing didn't work out, whatever, it was like a thank you so much, but like a next time kind of thing. And in
Mhm.
the moment, I was so bummed out. I was so like, fuck, like, oh my God. But then when I was at the concert, I was realizing I was like, Haley Williams really is the last hero, like real hero idol of mine that I have not met. And I was like, you know what? It's I kind of like that this is going to be delayed and that, one day I'll meet her probably, right? One day
Yeah.
I'll meet her on something, hopefully, probably, maybe, who knows? But I almost like that I didn't meet her this time around because I was like, I'm sure she's lovely and I'm sure she's amazing. I'm sure she's incredible. But I was like, if she is not a nice person, I cannot handle that mentally right now because really is
According to
like,
Regan, she's awesome. So
yeah, yeah, there you go. Okay. But no, she really is like my last like idol hero that I have not.
really?
And I'm like, you know
Wait, so you
what?
met Blackpink? You met all of them?
I've never met well, Blackpink is different. Blackpink, they're not. I love them. Like they're adorable. You know what I mean? Like I'm a big fan. But
Mm-hmm.
Haley, I grew up with. Like I would
Yeah.
say, in terms of like, not to be drama, but like music that saved my life, that was Paramore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I remember you were mentioning that when we were young festival.
yeah, like when I was like a teenager and I was in like the darkest times of my life, like I would like put on a Paramore record and I'd be like, holy
Mm-hmm.
shit,
We
somebody get
both do. I think we'll both play it
out.
together.
Exactly. Whereas like Blackpink is so much fun. You know what I mean? Like they're
Okay,
more,
yeah. I get what you're saying. So it's like, oh, we excited to meet them, but Haley's like, it's kind of like with me and Nessa Barrett. Like I just like I feel like I need to meet her like
yeah.
sometime in my life. Very like high key jealous of you.
Mm-hmm. She was such a cutie. She was so
Yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, no. I mean, honestly, she's like my bucket list like guest on this podcast. Like literally
Oh, I love it.
if she were to agree to be on my podcast, I would freaking fly to Los Angeles and I don't care how freaking much it is. I'm flying to Los
Hey,
Angeles
good.
and doing it in person, getting some studio because like I literally anyway, that's a whole other thing.
No, I love it.
Yeah, no, she's okay. I see. I'm starting to see that she's doing a lot of podcasts lately. Like she's being on people's podcasts, and I'm like, I know, like she has no idea who I am, or her team
Yeah.
knows who I am, or anything like that. But I'm like, who knows? Like, mentally about it is growing slowly,
Yeah.
but it's growing. Like I'm like I know, like on my Instagram, like 800 followers, really not a lot of followers, but I'm like, I
Yeah.
grew that without like telling all my family friends to follow me. Like I literally, I mean, I will of course promote it on like my story here and there, but like this is all straight content strategy. And I want to talk about boundaries. Do you
Okay.
like what boundaries do you set up with your clients?
What boundaries do I set up with my clients?
And I got boundaries. I tell you that.
I think boundaries that I set up with my clients. I think that, with my line of work, I very much have to be agile and flexible. And I think what makes me more attractive than some of these like giant PR teams is the fact that I can be a little bit more flexible than most and I have like the power to do that and say that.
Mm-hmm.
The only time I become frustrated or the only time I become like, okay, we need to like hard stop, reassess what's going on here is when things become ineffective. I can deal with messy, I can deal with scattered timelines, I can deal with, people being need to be led to water in order for them to like actually come up with like a concrete plan and strategy. What I can't deal with is like doing things just to do things and then making like very large rash decisions and they're not effective, right? Like I think when a client is like, well, what's going on here and what's going on there and this person needs to sign the contract and go and they just start spiraling out of control. I'm like, okay, this isn't effective anymore. Like this whole spiral and this back and forth and left and right, like this mess and this disorganized timeline and this whole thing, like I am trying to organize you as much as possible. Like I'm trying to really lead us to success here in order for you to really like see the fruits of your labor. You're gonna have to relinquish a little bit of control and trust
Yeah.
me. You're gonna have
Yeah.
to trust me a little bit and actually like let me do my job because I know it's scary and I know there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen and I know that there's 7,000 people behind the scenes like working on whatever project it is. Everybody has to take a deep breath. Let me do what I have to do. I promise it's gonna be fine. So I think that's the only time where I really like put my line in the sand where I'm like, okay, guys, this isn't effective anymore. We've spiraled about this 7,000 different times. Let's go back to basics and let's really like bring this project to the finish line.
Yeah, no, that actually makes sense. And you actually did talk about that in your story. But no, I'm literally the same way too. You're definitely more vocal about it than I am. But that just shows how confident you are. And I was in people listen to confidence, they will go with you. But no, that makes sense. Like I noticed that the clients that work with me that have the most success are the ones that listen to me.
Yeah, no, exactly. Right. Right.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
thing. Same thing. Okay, so how would you say that you would like cope with your stress? Because I know that sometimes you do have like your moments when you're like super stressed out, you like talk about it on your close friend's story. So how do you like cope with that? Like what do you do?
I definitely have way healthier coping mechanisms now that I'm in my late 20s, now that I'm like post therapy.
Mhm.
I would say yesterday was a perfect example of that. Like the day before yesterday, I like stayed out way too late. And like as I'm getting older, I really hate drinking. Like I don't want to
Starting
be
to hate
that
it too.
girl.
Oh my gosh, I'm the same
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. No, I don't want to be that girl at the party that's like, I just want like, sparkling water. Like I am starting to feel weird being the person at the party that's not drinking. But when I
Yeah.
do drink, I'm just like, I feel like such shit the next day. It's
Mm-hmm.
not worth it. My stomach hurts, my head hurts. I'm in bed. And yesterday I was having a bad day because I was really hungover.
Mm-hmm.
I was at work event the night before, and then we ended up going to this thing and blah, 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 blah. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just stressed out. A lot of things were coming at me. People needed answers. People were demanding things like very quickly. And I just took a step back, closed my lap. I didn't close my laptop. I put on Call Her Daddy. I put on my favorite podcast. And I went in my fridge and I just went grocery shopping and I cooked for an hour. And I just like sat there and I made a steak and bacon sandwich and I seared the steak and I made the
Wow.
marinade and I chopped up all of the ingredients and I cooked with all like whole foods and healthy foods and I toasted the bread properly and I just made like a really delicious, delicate, well-crafted sandwich for an
I
hour
love
and I got to
that.
work on a project. It was for me. At the end of it, there was like a reward. I got to like feed myself and nourish myself. And in that moment, I was like, when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
I I wouldn't have even I wouldn't have even known that that was a healthy coping mechanism to stress, and that sometimes you need to take a step back and like assess the situation. Like maybe I would have turned to drinking even more. Maybe I would have partied. Maybe I would have turned to sex.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm like, all right, it's okay to go take a walk. It's okay to go to the gym. It's okay to sit for an hour and literally just cook, like just do something that is for me that doesn't have anything like, this larger thing attached to it. I think, and you know this too, when
You're
you
just
own your
being human.
company, yeah, you have to be a human, but also it's like there's not a lot of time off when you own your own company. Like people will text you at 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday, on a Sunday, first thing in the morning. And I think because so much of our job is just kind of like replying to emails, replying to text messages, and giving people our energy 24/7. At a certain point, it's like, all right, I need to be shut off from the rest of the world. Like, I can't be accessible to everyone at all times
Mm-hmm.
because that's not healthy either. I've done that to
Mm-hmm.
myself and I've burnt myself out where I'm like,
Yeah.
everyone gets an answer and everybody gets a reply, and I have to reply to everybody in a timely fashion. I'm like, okay, but then when am I taking a step back and doing something for myself? Because when you are not the healthiest version of yourself, you really can't help people anyway.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it. I'm like, if I don't take a step back and be like, okay, let me like take an hour to deal with the stress in a healthy way so that
Mm-hmm.
I can get back to you with like a proper response. It may take me a little bit longer, but replying right then there in that moment may not have been, the best way to go about things anyway.
Yeah. And also like if you let's say you're like really stressed out and someone needs something and you're kind of like irritable, you don't want to reply back in a way where it can piss somebody else off. So
Mhm.
you just kind of like know when it's time where it's like, okay, like I know myself and I'm gonna step away, or it's just gonna turn into a shit show. Yeah, but
Exactly.
that's actually a really smart idea. I should probably do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because no, that's like cooking is actually very relaxing. If it's like, doing it for the purpose of like really just enjoy, like, enjoying yourself and making something like when I do like HelloFresh, I just actually really like doing that. And me and like Regan would like to do that as well. But I really wish I had like a kava sponsor because I was gonna be like, oh, if you don't want to do alcohol, kava's great.
What's kava?
Yeah, no one knows about it.
What
It's
is
the
it?
best thing ever. So it's actually been around for like ancient time, and it's actually originated from like like in Hawaii and everything. So it's plant medicine, but it doesn't get you high. So
Okay.
so like this one is drinking, and the reason I know about it is because Regan works at this place called Botanical Brewing, and he brews it. So
Okay.
so I'm drinking it right now, and as you can, I don't know if you notice, like my mood has kind of like changed throughout this whole conversation. I'm kind of like a little bit more, I don't know, uppity, but I'm not gonna get a
Mm.
hangover tomorrow. which is great.
Interesting. So it's
Yeah.
called Kava.
Yeah, it's Kava. There's a place in New York that I went to with like Kelly and Regan, but to be honest, I won't recommend it. It kind of sucked.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it was horrible. I was like, could I want to like introduce it to Kelly? Could I like I'm life introducing this? Like I literally have no incentive of introducing this to anybody. Like I'm not like working on a commission thing or anything like that. It's just like I love it so much and I like the whole culture of it. So like he
Mm,
works at this brewery and then they have a tap room. And the tap room is like the vibe is so nice. Like they have like two pool tables. They have like a place to relax. I'll go there and do some work. Like as long as you
okay.
buy a drink, they let you work there. Just like
Oh, I love that.
yeah, so I have like Kava, and then like I have like a membership there, like a loyalty thing, and then like I like chill on the couches, and then they have really cool music, and I just have the Wi-Fi, and I'm like out there doing my work and everything like that. And they're open from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah, it's awesome. And then so yeah, so each different like kava thing had like a different thing. So this one's like one that I'm drinking right now is Mood and Joy. So it
Okay.
like makes me like it basically boosts my mood and makes me like happier pretty much. And
That's
then
so
there's yeah,
interesting.
and there's one that was like calm and social. So it
It's
like
categorized
relax
as a
you.
drug. It's like
It
categorized.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I mean it is a drug. So like
Interesting.
obviously just be obviously anyone should just be cautious with it. Like don't be drinking it like a freaking smoothie or anything like that.
Interesting.
But yeah, no, it's like getting more pop. It's like popular in Florida here, but I get because like we're
Okay.
like in the more in the tropical area and stuff like that, and it's kind of like the vibe over here.
Okay.
So, but yes, I have one. Like I said, I have one in New York. I don't recommend you going to that one as like your first
They
experience
have a
because
couple in New York. They have like a handful.
yeah, I mean the one that I went to was so bad. I just don't want you to have a bad experience.
Yeah, I'll text
I
you
think
after this, but there's
I
a
think
couple
if
of other ones. There's one in my neighborhood in Hell's Kitchen, Kava. This is so
I
interesting.
yeah, so yeah, no, a lot of people like don't know about it. And so it's like yeah, no, it's cool. So it's like people who
Hmm.
also a lot of people who are used to be alcoholics are now resorting to
Hmm.
this.
Interesting.
So like a lot of people who work with work with Regan are like ex like coke addicts and alcoholics and it's like their branding is better than booze.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So it's really good for like if you know people who are like a recovering alcoholic and things like that because this is not addictive. So
Right.
it's not considered addictive. You don't get hangovers. Also in the tap room, like you know how you go to bars, they'll have like people we like beating each other up because they'll get angry or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah,
Like there's
yeah,
none of
yeah.
that there because it doesn't make you angry. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it doesn't. Yeah. So like the first time when I first had it, I did feel a little weird in the beginning, but that was only because my brain's like, what the heck is this? You know what I mean?
Right. Right,
But
right,
after
right.
the first time, you're fine. And it's just all good stuff. But yeah, no, I've been like really into it. And then like when I go there, I always see the same people all the time,
Oh,
like regulars, and everyone knows each other there. And it's like when you have like your first like kava, you always get like your first like they call it a shell. So it's like first, so
okay.
like when they introduce you to kava, they recommend to start like with a straight kava just so you can have like the experience, and then you
Okay.
can do like the mixed drinks and like all of that. But yeah, when you have your first one, and your first one's like free at the place that he works at, and they like do like a whole like oh like welcome thing, and it's really cool. Let's kind of like recap. So we talked a little, talked a lot about the your experience, you know, coming out as gay, and you gave us a lot of like you know wisdom and knowledge. So for people who are listening to this, they would have that you know that hope that you can go from you know how you said you were angry in high school and how you didn't like feel that you were ready to open up because of like the experience of bullying and being in a Catholic school to not being like
Yeah.
this badass entrepreneur, like openly gay and killing it in life and everybody freaking loves you. So, and then we talked about, you know, life in the PR world and how you handle stress. So typically at the end of the podcast, I always like ask if you have like a last like piece of wisdom that you would like to give my audience. So let's say we're talking to a person that is people who can listen to this could be like young people, you know,
Yeah.
like 17, 18. My audience is generally around like 18 to 30.
Mm.
But let's say like someone's not confident on coming out. What would you say to them?
If someone's not confident in coming out, what would I say to them? Um, I think like first thing is assessing or not whether your situation is safe. I think that we have extremism running rampant through our nation right now. I think um one of the things we talked about earlier is that like things were getting better when we were younger, but I don't think that that's really the case anymore. I think when we were younger, we saw a couple of states would legalize gay marriage, and then most states were legalizing gay marriage, and it was nationwide. And we saw that natural progression happen throughout the years. And then it was like, okay, now it's more acts protecting gay people, now it's more acts protecting trans people. And now, living in a post Donald Trump world, the extremism, especially with politics, has become so violent, so anti-fact, so like, again, just hateful and like
Yeah.
dangerous, that people really do genuinely believe that like they can outwardly hate Black people or gay people or trans people, and that that's okay because Tucker Carlson said it on TV, and Donald Trump said it, and Marjorie Taylor Greene said something, and then Ron DeSantis, and then this law was passed. Like, because there is now a community of like millions of people that are all living within their hatred.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain situations that are very dangerous. And I think a couple of years ago, maybe you were in a household that didn't necessarily accept you, but you were, still safe and you were okay and you were able to live there for a little bit longer and continue on. I think now people's situations may become very dangerous very quickly. All of
Mm-hmm.
that is to say, first thing is like assess your situation, know if you're living in an environment that is safe for you to come out and be your most authentic self. Do that audit
Mm-hmm.
first. And if you are living in that type of situation and you do have people around you that love you and are going to be there for you and are going to be supportive of you, friends, coworkers, family members, you know, the more honest with you are with yourself and the more honest you are with like other people, the happier you're going to be, the more free you're going to be, the more liberated you're going to be. I think we're also living in a world right now on the other side of that coin, like spaces that are not conservative and hateful and all those different things, like Gen Z progressive young spaces, like they don't even care anymore. Like, you know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Like, I think
Yeah.
going to high school in like a suburb that we went to now is probably so much different than what it was back then. It's like
Mm-hmm.
everyone's pan, everyone's queer, everyone's bi, everyone's
Mm-hmm.
something or other. Like, no one is sticking to the status quo and nobody is putting themselves into these like really strict boxes anymore. So just know that, like, as crazy as you think you are, or as weird as you think you are, or as different as you think you are, you're probably going to find your community very quickly once you become honest with yourself. And you're like, wait a minute, there's more people around me that are different and that are open and queer than I thought there were. It was just me hiding myself that was making me, feel isolated. Um, and I think the last thing, it sounds so cheesy, but it is so real. And I honestly don't think I understand what this meant until like this year, like as I'm entering my late 20s. Like, believing in yourself is 99.9% of the battle. Like, when I started my PR agency at 26, like that wasn't really my dream, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you. Like, that really wasn't my end all be all. It wasn't like something that I had been envisioning since I was 5 years old. Like, it was more so just right time, right place. Like, it was like a financially uh smart opportunity, and it launched my entrepreneurial mind, and it launched my mind into like, I really like being an entrepreneur. I really like owning my own business. I really like actioning on my own ideas and, managing a project and managing a team, etc. But I wouldn't say I really believed in myself that much at the time. I think I still had a lot of self-doubt. I think I still was like having this imposter syndrome thing where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, am I even good enough to be doing this? And
Mm-hmm.
I think this year is when I finally had a moment where I was just like, if I don't fucking believe in myself, like, I'm never going to be able to keep moving forward and actually activate on things I'm passionate about. And there's been like a handful of things that a couple of years ago, I was like, I can't do that. I'm not good enough. Like, I can't do that. Like, whatever. Where I'm like, who says I'm not good enough? Like, who says I can't do that? Who says that I can't become this thing, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now? Like, why not? Like, why not me? And there are certain situations that I've now been putting myself in, and there's certain opportunities that I've been putting myself up for where I'm just like, who cares? If it goes through, it does. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. But like, I believe in myself now, and I know my self-worth, and I know that my self-worth is not attached to any job or any friend group or any whatever. It's like I am separate from all of that. And I'm now very much like working on the relationship with myself and
Mm-hmm.
making sure that that is solid, because that's the relationship that you're going to have to have until the day you die.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the most important one.
Yeah, that was a lot of wisdom, packed wisdom. Love that for you, Matthew.
You have come such a long way. But I've seen you like from the very beginning. Well, not the very well, they were
Yeah.
like pre-K together from
Hey, oh my God, we did, right? Didn't we
we
find that
didn't
out
well,
later?
yeah, I think he like found like a classroom picture or something like that. And you were like, wait, that's you. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, we're really
No, it's crazy how long we've actually known it. It's crazy how long we've like actually known each other and the different times of our
uh-huh.
lives that we've, come in and
We
out.
I feel like we've been through like so much shit together. Like we've seen each other like when we were like rebellious teenagers, like crazy,
Yeah.
doing all of like we're just like going through it. And then now we're like these like we're like I'm not gonna say fully here because no one's ever fully here because everything's always back and forth, back and forth. But
Yeah.
like now we're like these badass entrepreneurs with all this wisdom and doing great things. So it's just like you are probably, I mean, I've had friends in my podcast, but I mean, like, you're the person I've like known like the longest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
crazy.
it's crazy. Um, okay. So I'm going to end this podcast here. Thanks again, Matthew, for being on here. I really appreciate you.
Oh my God, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Of course. And thanks everyone for listening and stay tuned for next week's episode.